Hello and welcome to Science Unscripted. It's Conor here.
And Gabe?
We received a lot of emails this last week, and from you, our listeners all around the world. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them were about sleep.
One of the things that we pride ourselves on here at Science Unscripted is we try to help listeners. This particular listener was trying to help us by sharing her tip on what she does when she's suffering from insomnia or can't sleep.
Help us help our listeners.
Help us help.
And
yeah, help me help you. She wanted to help me by telling me how she helps herself.
Yes. A refresh for any of you out there listening right now who missed the episode where we talked to Stein Masser. He was in Singapore, and he was discussing an experiment that he conducted together with colleagues on university-aged people, some of whom could have a boatload of stress during the day and then fall asleep, and some of whom couldn't. And at the end there, we talked about a couple of tactics to help get to sleep.
This is what Paula does, who wrote to us. As a person that has problems turning off my brain, I have started playing a game to sleep. For each letter of the alphabet, I think of an animal. If not asleep by zebra, I go through the alphabet again thinking of something else, i.e. vegetables, fruit, automobile makers, rodents, etc. Rarely do I require a third pass.
Wait a minute.
Well, Paula, I tried. I tried using this tip. And
Did you?
I tried to go through the alphabet, and I didn't even get through I before I hit a roadblock. I couldn't think of an animal that starts with I. And
probably an Iberian mountain goat.
for some reason, my brain just kept saying igloo. Inuit. I was like, "What are you doing, man?"
I was going to say indigo.
And then I finally got iguana, but I was so flustered at not being able to just speed through the alphabet like Paula that my brain jumped somewhere else, and I ended up playing guitar scales in my head.
I was just going to say you abandoned it.
I abandoned it, and then I just forgot what I was doing. And
yeah, Paula, feel free to share with us at some point what your eye animal is, or any of you out there. There are not too many of those. And just to reiterate, she's going through all of the animals first, and then once you've done that, you go through vegetables,
car makers, fruit, rodents, etc.
Rodents is not on that list.
It is.
Did she write that?
It totally is, yeah, etc. Rodents, etc.
Okay. There's no way. That's a joke. I like that joke. We got another email, this one from Alan. He had 3 things that he does when he is trying to fall asleep. One of them is read an easygoing book. Read an easygoing book.
Got it.
So not something no thrillers here. Nothing no cliffhangers at the end of the chapter where you're going to get, I got to go through that next chapter.
Like the biography of John Elway, was a quarterback I liked when I was a kid.
Is there? Yeah, there probably is a biography. Something where, it's a little dusty, a little soporific. You used that word last week, and I'm happy to use it now.
Sleep-inducing, yeah.
Yeah, where it kind of calms you down. Number 2 was listening to the radio or listening to something. This was the distraction that we talked about. That does help me. My version of that is the publicly financed European or French-German broadcaster, Arte. Very good stuff, and a little slow in a good way. And then finally, when the rest of the household complains about him listening to the radio, he says here, he turns the radio back off, and then he works on languages. Right now, a kind of do-it-yourself project with Espanol, with Spanish, and he's working on that now.
And that is very good for his biological aging.
Exactly.
Compared to chronological aging, which we also learned last week. Multilingualism, slowing down the aging process, possibly.
Exactly. Yeah, associatively, in any case. On to the fresh science. I'm going to start today with something that came out of the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, together with the University of Turku. Do you know where that is?
Finland.
Good. I didn't know where that was.
Yeah.
I thought it was Turkey. And then I looked it up. Turns out it's a university of 20,000 people in a city of 200,000 people. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, those 2 places collectively took a look at mountain gorillas.
Really?
Yeah. And then I thought to myself, no, how do you look at, where are the mountain gorillas? They're in Uganda. And specifically I couldn't really get over this name at first, in the Bwimdi Impenetrable National Park.
Because it's hard to get into?
So I was thinking, if it's impenetrable, how do we know about the mountain gorillas? No, impenetrable in this case, according to Wikipedia, means that there are no roads leading in or out. You are going in there on foot, which is absolutely amazing. It's part of the reason it's a World Heritage Site. The other part is that 400 of the remaining 1,000 wild mountain gorillas are in this park. They're looking at observational data, behavioral data from gorillas in there, specifically 25 gorillas from 4 different groups, all of them female. And they looked at at 3 decades of data on these female gorillas and established something that had never been established about wild mountain gorillas before, namely that a decent percentage of them keep living long after they've stopped reproducing.
Okay.
This is post-reproductive life, and most animals do not do that. Most animals, we tend to, or that's kind of a surprise to us because we humans obviously do.
Live way longer, yeah.
Way longer than our reproductive lives.
Yeah.
Most animals, right up into the bitter end, they're trying to basically pop out as many new generations as possible to increase the likelihood that their genes survive.
Following all the different litters, then they just once it's done, you check out and that's it.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
not these particular mountain gorillas.
These mountain gorillas, in this sense, at least 7 out of the 25 females, they could say with certainty that for more than 10 years after they had stopped reproducing, they were still living.
So what's going on with these?
What's going on with them is they fit into what is called the grandmother hypothesis, meaning that this appears to be one of the select few animals that that lives longer than their reproductive lives. Other animals in there, chimpanzees, numerous whales as well, where at least one of the parents or both parents live much longer than their reproductive lives and hence take care of the grandchildren. In that case, they're still around.
The offspring of the offspring.
The offspring of the offspring. Now, if that sounds magnanimous, wow, how nice to hang around, take care. It's it's selfish because it's ultimately my genes that I'm protecting.
Of course.
And that this is a better investment to ensure that they do make it all the way down. I'll end with a quote from the lead author. The evolutionary pressures which might have favored the evolution of post-reproductive lifespan or even menopause in gorillas remain unclear. We are still far from deciphering the evolutionary roots of these traits in gorillas and beyond.
Thank you, Connor. My study here, it's more effectively a public service announcement. It was a gigantic study published in The Lancet on just how bad ultra-processed foods are for human beings. They looked at 104 of the largest long-term studies on what these kinds of foods, if you want to call them that, do to human beings. They're associated with 12 different chronic diseases, 92 different other physical ailments. And in terms of mortality, in the United States and the UK, they looked at premature deaths. About 15% of premature deaths are directly, at least associated with the consumption of these foods. And they also looked at how many people consume ultra-processed foods on a regular basis. Sometimes half of people's diets, all the way up to 80% of their diets are these foods. But what I found was kind of lacking in the Lancet study or series of different papers on this was a definition of ultra-processed foods. I mean, obviously, by the term ultra-processed, you're thinking, okay, there are processes going on. And they say it's on an industrial scale. But what exactly does it mean? And I kind of looked into it.
I always imagine it's like it's going through the smallest sieve possible. Like if you had a potato which has starch and or anything that has I'm thinking of the German word Ballast. Anything that has fiber, yeah, it gets removed as part of that process.
I checked out the NIH, the National Institutes of Health in the United States for a definition. They have one. Ultra-processed foods are formulations of ingredients that result from a series of industrial processes, okay? Starts with the fractioning of whole foods into substances that include sugars, oils, fats, proteins, starches, and fiber. So what they're getting at is these initial food groups are broken down and then kind of put back together using additives like emulsifiers, which kind of makes it easy to mold food together, makes fats and liquids bind together where you don't see it. So it makes it so that you can take the original food that are obtained on a huge scale, break them down, and then formulate them into other things. And then on top of that, a lot of hydrogenation adding sugar, fake sugar to these things, frying them again using these emulsifiers to mold them. So what has happened? And it's such a scary image for what we're doing, because given that people are eating a lot of this stuff, is that it's actual food at the beginning. You're breaking it down and then making it into food that looks and tastes
Like the original?
like it copies the original, but takes kind of the good stuff out, the actual nutrients.
Well, at the very
shreds them off.
Yeah,
because those things
yeah.
tend to they don't hold as long.
Not only that, they don't necessarily taste as good. One of the things,
or they're not as palatable. Exactly.
Yeah, when you're eating a lot of raw fruits and vegetables, you're consuming a lot of fiber, and that's not necessarily very pleasant. It's going to make you go to the bathroom quite a bit more often, but our bodies evolved to deal with that much better than if there's none of that in our diet. In fact, rewind, 50,000 years, it would have been impossible to I think, to consume no fiber. And yet now with these processed foods, you've taken a lot of that stuff out.
It makes it a lot more fun to eat them. And in conclusion here, this NIH definition, ultra-processed foods are designed to create highly profitable products so that these giant corporations can sell a lot more of their stuff. Because think about when you're eating these foods that are so much fun and so pleasurable to eat, the dopamine hit that you get, you want to get that again. So next time you're not just hungry, you're addicted, you're going through withdrawal. I want that dopamine hit again because it is so irresistible to eat these products. They're so fun to look at. They're so perfect.
So
and
crunchy.
They taste so great.
Yeah.
That's where it gets sad, because if people in the US and the UK, some of them are eating 80% of their diet based on this stuff, they are completely addicted to these dopamine loops. And that's sad. If in the end it's taking away lives, it's taking life off their
that's a big
years off their life.
That's a big problem. This is the kind of thing, we're spreading this knowledge on the show. It's good to know. And yet at the same time, I question whether any of our listeners out there will be able to take this knowledge into the supermarket and do much with it. Because it's hard to look at products on the shelf and to know what they are exactly.
Yeah. I'm also, like, imagine getting off the late shift and you're going into the store. Are you going to spend a lot of time looking at the label and seeing if there's xanthan gum or phenylalanine? Like,
right.
If anything, you're going to look at the macronutrients, and what some of the researchers are asking for is for some of these micronutrients where it's an absolute giveaway that they're ultra-processed are then included in those labels, in the ingredient labels. I guess for a takeaway for our listeners, if you want to avoid some of these ultra-processed foods, fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, nuts, peanuts, cashews, that can't be processed. Those are naturally occurring. You can't process those any further. Those would be, I guess, some tips. But I understand that this study maybe possibly it's hard to be constructive with it.
Well,
it's awareness.
Awareness leads to change, hopefully at the governmental level. I can't remember if I borrowed this idea from a country that was doing it or it was genuinely an original thought. But it sure seems like you could have labeling that has red like a stoplight, yellow like a maybe you can go, and then green, hey, this is not processed.
Minimally processed.
Green, something, a clear visual symbol instead of a small print. I mean, even my eyes, sometimes you got to squint to see, wait, how much fiber is in there? Is that fiber? Is that protein? I've lost track of the lines here.
I didn't know that xanthan gum was an emulsifier before looking at this study.
You didn't know that, Gabe? Do you have anything to say on ultra-processed foods, UPFs, I guess, is the cool way to refer to them? Yeah. Do you have anything to say on either human menopause or animal menopause or the grandmother hypothesis as it connects to us human beings and apparently wild mountain gorillas in southwestern Uganda? Let us know. We're su@dw.com. A few months back, might have been a half year now, we talked on the show about a very specific animal, the raccoon.
Here in Germany, right?
Here in Germany. And the reason we talked about it was because of a meme that was sent to me on my phone that suggested, and we debunked that meme, or at the very least said you cannot substantiate that claim. What the meme tried to argue is that the reason Germany has millions of raccoons is because toward the end of the Second World War, a raccoon fur farm in the northeastern part of Germany was quote unquote aerially bombed, and hence what, a wall fell down and all the raccoons
Got out.
got out. That cannot be substantiated. What is, I think, more likely is probably that people were fleeing in the midst of war, and any cages or any caged animals were probably let out. Right? These are not necessarily totally callous individuals involved in the fur trade. I don't know. I don't know. We just couldn't substantiate that claim. But that's why there are millions of raccoons here in Germany.
They also happen to be very good at surviving, especially in urban areas where they're trash bandits. They're trash bandits. But the reason why we're talking about raccoons today is that they are undergoing some serious changes, and now we have proof.
Science Unscripted.
All right, I'm ready. My name is Rafaela Lesh. I'm an assistant professor of biology at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, and I co-authored a study on raccoon domestication.
And what did you learn in that study on raccoon domestication, Rafaela?
So what we learned was that there seems to be a difference in rural and urban populations of raccoons, in that living in close proximity to humans does seem to trigger a domestication like trait or even domestication in those urban animals.
And in more simple language, if a raccoon is living close to me, it's going to act more like it's tame or has been tamed?
Yeah, so if a raccoon lives closer to humans, the environment that creates basically turns these animals into tamer versions of themselves over generations. So that proximity to humans really creates a very specific environment in which animals adapt both in behavior but also in anatomy and morphology to that environment, to that human environment.
What are the changes that these raccoons who are near or are in urban environments, are near houses, what changes have they gone through?
So the changes that we focused on, or the changes that we were interested in measuring, were related to the snout. So we wanted to measure snout length in both urban and rural raccoons, and we found that urban raccoons have shorter snouts than rural raccoons, which is a symptom of the domestication syndrome, so a trait that many domesticated animals share.
Why would they? Why would their snouts start shrinking just because they're closer to us?
The whole process of domestication is tied to proximity to humans. So animals that live in this close proximity to humans are under selection pressure for tame behavior, for friendly behavior. So if you think about what that environment looks like, as an animal, you have to be tolerated by humans. And in order to be tolerated by them, you can't afford to be aggressive. So you have to be friendly enough for humans to tolerate you. And this selection pressure changed the animal's developmental patterns in early development. And in early development, the patterns that changed are patterns that are tied to a cell group that is called the neural crest. And these neural crest cells, they migrate through the entire embryo and provide progenitor cells for all different kinds of organ systems. So ancestral cells that build, for example, the facial skeleton, the tail, the ears. And that slight deficit that is created through that selection pressure explains all these traits in domestication syndrome. So the floppy ears, curly tails, shorter snouts, and smaller brains, for example.
And only some of the raccoons were able to adapt this way and others weren't? Or what exactly happened with these raccoons over time?
Yeah, so the idea in this study was to test whether we find differences in urban and rural populations, because the idea that we wanted to test is that maybe an urban environment, so maybe a city environment, can be enough to kickstart a domestication process. So the idea was, if we compare raccoons that live in cities to raccoons that live out on the countryside, we would expect raccoons that live in the cities to show these symptoms, or one of these symptoms like the snout reduction, compared to the rural ones. And that's indeed what we found.
Rafaela, how did you find this out? Have you been tracking raccoons for like the past couple of years, or how exactly did you arrive at the conclusion that the snout of domesticated raccoons, or the raccoons that have started this domestication process, is shorter than the wild ones?
So we really to study this, we looked at a citizen science database called iNaturalist, where just everyday citizens can upload images that they take around the yard when they go for hikes, and it's tagged with location information. So we downloaded all of these images and then tied the image location to whether that was a rural or an urban area. And then we're able to measure the snout length compared to the skull length on these animals and determine how long the snout is in relation to the head. And that's how we determined that urban raccoons had shorter snouts than rural ones.
Extending this further into the future, are we sleepwalking our way toward a world where raccoons are what, totally domesticated? I've got a dog, a cat, and a raccoon in my house.
Hopefully, hopefully. So if they are indeed on the pathway to domestication, then yeah, eventually we might end up with a cat pushing stuff off the shelf, the dog going through the trash, and the raccoon dangling from the ceiling fan, which would be fantastic in my opinion. But I guess the really important thing here to consider is also that these processes take thousands of years. So especially when they happen out in in nature. So we won't be around to see the results of this potential domestication event, but maybe our great 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 grandchildren will be able to benefit from their own domesticated raccoon in their living room.
I don't want to wait 1,000 or 5,000 more years to see what happens. Could you genetically alter raccoons today to accelerate that process and create my pet raccoon trademark?
So I wish I could. So the problem here is that we don't really fully understand the genetic mechanisms. We're still in the scientific world, we're still arguing what all is connected and involved in these changes. But the good news is I can't offer you a pet raccoon, but I could send you off to get a pet fox because this domestication experiment or the idea behind this domestication process has also been tested in foxes. And the foxes, the domesticated foxes, are kind of what inspired the creation of this hypothesis tied to these neural crest cells. And that was a team of Russian scientists around Dmitry Belyaev. And he wanted to domesticate a species within a human lifetime and started selecting these foxes on the fox farm and bred only the friendliest individuals. And over, I think, 5 to 10 generations, they already found huge differences in anatomy and in behavior. And now, a couple of decades later, all of the foxes that they have on that farm are incredibly tame and super excited to meet humans. So very dog-like almost in their behavior.
So if within the span of what, 70, 80 years, this Russian experiment has shown that foxes can be tamed,
Yeah.
why would it take 1,000 years for raccoons to go through the process? Or if we did a similar experiment on raccoons,
Yeah.
could that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we did a similar experiment with raccoons, we would probably see the same timeline or a similar timeline as to what we have seen with the foxes. The problem really is if it happens, if we run these experiments like the foxes, then we are the ones who are accelerating this actively through breeding. And that kind of opens it up for a little bit of criticism where it's not really just populations changing in response to an evolutionary pressure, but really us kind of interfering with that a little bit.
And ignoring the criticism from the people who would say that artificial selection is wrong,
Yeah.
would you would you want a pet raccoon, Rafaela? I mean that
So personally, I live in Arkansas. In Arkansas, you are allowed to own a wild raccoon. So technically, if I I would say if I ever encountered a baby raccoon in need of help, there would be probably a good chance that, we might end up with a raccoon friend running around on our property. But the crucial thing here is that at this stage, they're not domesticated yet. So what you get is a wild animal that is used to humans So they have all the wild instincts. They do all the things that they would do out in nature. So it's almost similar to if you took a wolf and put a wolf into the living room at this point, we would just put a wild animal in our living room. And while it would be fun, it most likely would also be very destructive. But I would be tempted. Yeah, I would be.
Do they have a favorite food? I mean, we've established that they like trash, but
Yeah.
what is their favorite food?
So honestly, they will just eat about anything. I've seen them eat Subway sandwiches out of a trash can. I've seen them eat cat food, dog food, chicken food. If it's honestly like if your dog would enjoy it, the chances are that the raccoon would too. So you just want to make sure that if you were to have food out, that is something that is not like dangerous to them, but they eat about anything.
What
They're very flexible in their diet.
what kind of Subway sandwich? Was it a foot long?
It was a foot long. Yeah, I was on campus, and that raccoon, like I threw a little an empty Red Bull can in the trash can. It just made a sound kind of like boing, and it didn't sound right. So I looked in the trash can, and there was this huge raccoon with a foot long Subway sandwich. Um, I I think it was roast beef. I'm not
roast
sure.
beef.
How far along was
Yeah.
it?
Roast beef.
Yeah. And he had it like in his paws. He unwrapped the top half. I don't even know who threw away an entire like Subway sandwich or if that raccoon like threatened that person or what was going on there, but he was sitting in that trash can with that roast beef sandwich.
And
Yeah.
to summarize the results of your study or the conclusion of your study, that raccoon got to that Subway sandwich because over time it has learned to be near humans better, to act more tame, or what exactly is the essence of your study?
Yeah, so the essence of the study is that as animals adapt to living close to humans, their anatomy and their behavior changes. So over generations, we ended up at like, for example, this specific raccoon that has adapted over many generations to be more tolerant towards humans, to also be less scared of them. And these behavioral changes go hand in hand with some anatomical changes like that reduction in snout length.
And that was Rafaela Lesh speaking to us from Little Rock, Arkansas, from her house that has a lot of animals in it.
Mm-hmm.
She was telling us before that she used to sleep late
Or
until she got
sleep in. Yeah.
sleep in until she got a lot of chickens and at least what was it?
In combination with
dog and a cat.
With a dog and a cat, and the way she describes it, she would love to also have a raccoon, a fully domesticated raccoon in that mix. One thing I just wanted to reiterate for all our listeners out there is she mentioned an app at one point called iNaturalist, the letter I and the word naturalist. This is an app that I have just downloaded and installed. Right now I'm looking through the camera feature at you, Gabe. If I wanted to, it wouldn't make sense, but I could take a picture right now of either Gabe.
What?
well,
I'm a
Gabe-
wild animal.
Yeah, Homo sapien. Put you in the Homo sapien. We could check over time how they change. No, I could go outside right now and take photographs of all the variety of trees and bushes and leaves and animals I see there. It gets automatically uploaded. And that is why you just heard about that study.
That's it. So over 30 years, about 100,000 images were captured of raccoons.
That alone is astonishing.
That right.
100,000 different times people are like, look, raccoon, photograph, and then uploaded it to iNaturalist. That's why this study happened.
Based on those images, the conclusions were drawn by Rafaela and her colleagues in Arkansas. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I guess that may be the most important message here, because some of you either do interact with raccoons or don't, or you care or you don't care. We can leave the raccoons. You can be a part of scientific progress just by whipping your phone out and taking a couple pictures when you see something interesting outdoors. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Any questions about raccoons? Any experiences you've had with them, positive or negative? Please let us know. su@dw.com.
You and me in the clouds, sparkling diamond glass. Another drink, another tune, dance away through the groove. The night is ours, the night is ours, the night is ours, the night is ours.
DW. Made for minds.